I've shot with this camera for over a year now, and it's become one of the most popular cameras because of its price point, its image quality, and the fact that it has a gimbal built into it. I personally started out with the Osmo Pocket 1 when it was first released almost 7 years ago, so I'm a huge fan of these pocket cameras. I know a lot of people are curious on whether or not they should pick up this camera or wait for the Osmo Pocket 4 or buy a different camera altogether. This video is not sponsored by DJI. They did not send me this camera. I bought it with my own money. I did, however, make a 2.5 hour course of the Osmo Pocket 3. In case you're interested, I'll leave a link to that course in the description. It pretty much teaches you everything that you need to know on the Osmo Pocket 3 in order to go out and start getting some cinematic looking type shots. I have owned the Pocket 3 now for over a year, and I've really put this camera through its paces, and I'm gonna tell you what I love about it and what I think it needs improvement on. I have versed it against the iPhone 15 Pro, the iPhone 16 Pro, the GoPro Hero 12, the Google Pixel 9 Pro, the Fuji X-M5, the Insta360 X4, and the Sony ZV-E10 Mark I, and the Sony ZV-E10 Mark II. I'll leave links to all of those videos in the description in case you're interested, but for now, let's talk about this camera. If you're curious about how this camera's video files will perform on your editing rigs, I've created a free project file pack for you to download with a range of footage, including log footage in different frame rates and resolutions, and also I've included some photography shots. This way you can edit the footage as you follow along. I'll leave links to that file pack in the description. By the way, I just created a new LUT pack for the Osmo Pocket 3 that was inspired by Fujifilm's film simulations. If you like the film look, then you're gonna love these LUTs with the Pocket 3. I'll leave a link to that LUT pack in the description. All right, so that's the itinerary for today's video, and I'm excited to share with you my experience with the Osmo Pocket 3 after 1 full year of use. Today, on the Film Alliance. So far, after owning it, I haven't experienced too many limitations with it. It hasn't dropped any frames on me, it hasn't produced any corrupt files, it's never overheated on me, it hasn't gotten too hot to touch while I'm shooting out in hot environments, but it does get pretty warm. It's never shut off on me for any reason, so overall, it's a very reliable camera. I know there are people out there who are a bit nervous about the gimbal head, me included, and its delicate nature, because if you drop this thing by accident and it lands the wrong way, that could be the end of your Osmo Pocket 3. I have had a couple of close calls dropping it from about waist height, but thankfully it was on carpet. So far, so good. This is one reason, however, I would recommend picking up DJI Care Refresh 2-year plan. In the off chance that you do drop it and break it, you can send it into them, have them fix it, and then send it back to you. I got that Care Refresh 2-year plan when I bought my DJI Mavic, which is a drone, and I crashed it. I sent it into them and they sent me back a new one or a fixed one, I can't remember, but DJI really does stand by its products. The display is a real step up from the older Osmo Pocket 3s because it's much more responsive, it's brighter, and it's just plain bigger. But if I had to nitpick it a little bit, I would say it's not as touch sensitive as something like my iPhone or the Google Pixel 9 Pro or a smartphone. You know how sensitive those touchscreens are? This one, sometimes I find myself trying to swipe or find something on the screen and I have to tap it a couple of times. But generally, it's no big deal. I do keep a microfiber cloth with me, and if I don't have that, then I'll use my shirt to clean the display. This will keep the display nice and clean, and it will maximize its touch sensitivity and prevent those times where maybe finger oils and greases get onto the display and then it becomes less sensitive. Hopefully they'll improve that with the Osmo Pocket 4. The size of this thing is really what is amazing because it's so compact and it's easy to handle. You can hold it vertically and still shoot horizontal, especially if you want to be discreet. Sometimes when I'm out filming in public, I would prefer to be more discreet and hold a camera like this rather than have a dedicated camera that I'm holding, and then people see me and then security guards might come up to me and say that I can't film on the premises. But so far, using this thing out in public, I've never had a security guard come up to me and say, you can't use this. If you're a vertical shooter, you can also shoot vertically, but the resolution does max out at 3K. So if you want to shoot in a full 4K, you'll need to shoot horizontally or hold the camera like this, but now you lose that discrete factor. Another reason why I love this camera so much is because it's super versatile. And when I say versatile, what I mean is I really appreciate how it lets me get shots that I would just never attempt to get with my bigger cameras. I rigged it up to an extension pole and I threw it up way high in the sky, and I was able to get some drone looking shots without having to set up my drone. I also attached a few bits and pieces together so that I could actually see the Pocket 3 screen from the bottom of the pole, and I could actually monitor what the Osmo Pocket 3 was seeing from about 12 to 16 feet up in the air. So that was pretty cool. If you do hyperlapses right, they can really add something dynamic to your videos. There are a couple of ways to go about it. You can use the dedicated hyperlapse video mode that comes inside of the Pocket 3, or you could use the regular video with tracking on and then just speed it up in post-production. I go into a lot more detail about how to do it in my course, but I could probably do an entire video on hyperlapses and time lapses themselves. But speaking about time lapses and motion lapses, you can do that as well within the camera. You've probably seen these types of shots on social media, but with other cameras, you have to do a lot more preparation and post-production work in order to get these shots, whereas with the Pocket 3, you can get it in camera. I've used the Pocket 3 in all different types of lighting conditions, and I've gotten pretty comfortable on getting the exposure just right. I do use ND filters when I'm outside shooting and it's really bright out, but I'm not a huge fan of just slapping an ND filter on whenever I feel like it's too bright. I think there's a time and a place and a threshold of when you're supposed to use ND filters, because ND filters can really saturate your colors and throw all of your color science off. It'll make your blues bluer, your greens greener, it'll shift the color of your skies. So I just prefer to use my shutter speed first, get it to a certain point before I resort to using an ND filter. The reason why this may be a problem is if you're out shooting and it's not too bright outside and you're getting a bunch of shots with your Osmo Pocket 3, then all of a sudden the sun comes out, you throw an ND filter on it, now your colors are gonna be different from the first portion of your shoot earlier in the day when you weren't using an ND filter compared to when you started to use an ND filter. And then when you start to mix and match that footage together in post-production, it's not gonna have cohesion. Now with that being said, I did find some ND filters that don't mess with the colors too much, but they still do give a lot of the saturation and color shift, but I'll leave the ones that I found in the description. If you know of any better ND filters that don't shift the color at all, please let us all know in the comment section. I can shoot in 4K up to 120 frames per second, and that's not just a gimmick. It really does a great job with its slow motion footage. I usually leave it set to 4K 60 or 4K 24 depending on what I'm shooting, but I believe each one of those frame rates has a different application. With that being said, it is nice to have 4K 120 if I'm feeling creative. One thing that bugs me a little bit about the Pocket 3 is how you can't shoot slow motion directly in video mode. You have to switch it over to the slow motion mode, which adds an extra step in workflow while you're out filming with it. Hopefully they address this in the Pocket 4, but it's not that big of a deal. Speaking of slow motion, remember to keep your eye on the shutter speed. Just stick to that 180-degree shutter rule and you'll be good to go most of the time. Now, if you do decide to shoot in 1080p, 240 frames per second, make sure you do that in a well-lit environment. I've noticed many times when I'm shooting in low light, I might switch it over to slow motion and try to get 1080 to try to save on file space and battery, and then I come home and my images are completely unusable. And maybe that's to be expected, but the thing that I've learned is don't shoot 1080 when you're in a low light condition. However, this is a 10-bit camera, so it performs really well in low light situations as long as you're shooting in 4K. I was able to go to this downtown area at low light hours and even night hours, and I was shocked to see how good the Pocket 3 performed in those lighting situations. I have used this camera as an overhead product shot. If you're a YouTuber or someone who likes to do product shots where you're looking at the top-down type of shot, the Osmo Pocket 3 is great. It's got a wide lens, and most of the time everything is in focus if you don't have something too close to the lens itself. Another advantage of the 10-bit color depth is you can get some really clean green screen keying as long as your lighting is even. With 8-bit cameras, I often find that you get a bit of a green halo around your subject, but that's not really an issue with 10-bit cameras like the Pocket 3. I've actually used the Pocket 3 as a vlogging camera in the past in some of my tests, and I love the way the stabilized footage looks along with the framing that it gives. It has a couple of different modes like face auto detect and face tracking, but those can drain your battery pretty quickly, so I usually just stick with follow mode. It gives me more control of where the gimbal is looking and also saves on my battery juice. One challenge I have run into while shooting outdoors is that it can be tough to see the display when you're getting those low angle shots. My solution is to use my phone with the Mimo app. That way I can get those nice low shots without having to lose the sight of the framing and the exposure. I've used each one of the 3 color profiles, and each one of them has its strengths and its weaknesses. I could do a whole video on color profiles in the Pocket 3, but to keep it short, I generally prefer to shoot in D-Log-M so I can easily match the colors of my footage with other cameras that I'm shooting in the same exact sequence. So D-Log-M will give me the ability to color grade my footage. The standard color profile bakes in the color, which gives you less flexibility in post-production. And then HLG is the third color option as well, but it does have some quirks. Like, you need to be aware that when you're shooting in HLG, whoever's watching that footage on playback needs to have an HLG monitor, because if they're watching it with an SDR monitor, everything will look overexposed. But if you're shooting with HLG and uploading it to YouTube, YouTube will automatically convert that so people with SDR monitors can see it. Now, I know it is only a 9 megapixel camera, but you can actually get some really nice photos with it if you expose properly. I wouldn't recommend cropping in too much or zooming at all, so just make sure to get your framing right before you press that shutter button. But I've been pretty surprised on some of the shots that I've gotten. A key that you have to pay attention to while doing photography is the lighting, and generally making sure that whatever subject you're shooting, it's front lit and not backlit. Whenever I shoot backlit objects with the Pocket 3, the image falls apart pretty quickly, so I make sure that the source of light is generally either behind me or to the side of me. But once it gets on this side of the frame and I'm shooting into the light, my images will start to fall apart. I've also been having a lot of fun with the Panorama Mode. It's super easy to use and it produces great results. If you're into shooting real estate shots, it's a great way to make your spaces look even bigger. The Mimo app is somewhat quirky, but it can really help you, especially when shooting in those awkward positions that I mentioned earlier. When you have the Osmo Pocket 3 and a low angle, you can't tilt the display. So that's when I would use the Mimo app so I can actually monitor what the display is seeing, and I can even control the exposure. I'm not a huge fan of using the Mimo app, but it does have 2 really important exposure tools that the camera itself just doesn't have. One is zebras and one is histograms. Zebras are basically an overexposure warning, and the histogram gives you a visual representation of the tonal range of your image. So this way you can make sure that you're exposing correctly rather than just using the exposure compensation on the Osmo Pocket 3 itself. I personally like to expose for the highlights. This way I don't have anything that's overexposed, and these tools make it a lot easier to do that. If you're curious about the battery life, I did some tests and the results were pretty impressive in my opinion. I recorded in 4K 60 and checked the temperature periodically for 45 minutes. And the temperature climbed pretty quickly at first, but then it leveled off. I'm not sure why that happened, but it's probably why I've never had it overheat on me. I also tested out the battery life in both a studio environment and out in the field. And I was able to shoot for most of the day in 4K 60 without using any of the intelligent auto modes. That's pretty darn good. You can't swap out the battery on the Pocket 3, but you can buy an external battery that attaches to the bottom, which will give you an extra 60% charge. It does come with the Creator Combo Kit if you decide to purchase that instead of the body alone. But one of the coolest things about the battery and the charging with the Pocket 3 is that when you hook it up to a USB-C charger, it goes from 0 to 100% in just 21 minutes. That's crazy fast. The built-in microphones are nothing to write home about, but if you have USB-C headphones and you hook it up to the USB-C port, you can actually monitor your audio on the display, which is super helpful. This little camera is amazing, and it's no wonder why it's so popular. It can shoot in 4K up to 120 frames per second. It's got 10-bit color, it's got great stabilization, and it fits in your pocket. You'll get amazing dynamic range, way better than the older Osmo Pockets, which were only 8-bit, or even a smartphone. And like I said, it's super versatile. So you could throw it up onto a boom pole, you could do low angle shots with it. You can transfer the images to your phone using the Mimo app. But here's something to consider if you are planning on purchasing the Osmo Pocket 3. The footage can be a pain to edit. 4K footage is no joke. My 2019 iMac choked on the footage, so I had to use a beefier computer in order to edit its footage. If I couldn't do that, then I'd be stuck shooting in 1080, which means I wouldn't be able to shoot in low light. So make sure your computer is powerful enough. That's why I wanted to make sure to leave you guys project files so you could test them out on your editing rigs to make sure you don't buy this camera, and then once you get this camera, you go out, you shoot an entire day with it, then you come home and you try to edit that footage and you realize that your computer can't even handle it. I already mentioned how you could pick up the Creator Combo Kit to get that extra battery, but another thing that comes in the Creator Combo Kit is the DJI Mic 2 and an extra wide angle lens. The Mic 2 is great, it has great audio, it has 32-bit float, and it can record internally so you'll have backup audio recording. And the wide angle lens gives you a little bit of a fisheye look, but it's fun to play with and makes spaces look a lot bigger. Just a heads up though, this thing consistently comes in and out of stock, so if you see it in stock right now and you're thinking about purchasing it, just know if you don't pull the trigger right now, you might have to wait for it to come back in stock again. All right, that is my 1-year review with the Osmo Pocket 3. I hope I answered all of your questions. Please let me know if you have any more questions in the comments below and I'll try to answer them. Thanks for watching. I'm Joe with the Film Alliance, and I'll see you on the next video. One of the most asked questions that I receive is, which camera should I buy? I know that you want to make the right decision, and it's a big decision. You want to find the camera that best suits your needs and stays within your budget. Many of you know which camera might be for you, but you need some guidance pinpointing it and feeling confident in your decision. That's why I made this course. I want to put my camera experience and knowledge into a compact and easy to follow format. I jam-packed it with camera buying fundamentals that I guarantee you will carry through the rest of your camera journey. I based this entire course on all the things that I wish I had known or someone had told me when I first started out. From understanding different camera types and their features to matching them with your specific video and photography needs, this course covers it all. After finishing, I'm confident that you'll finally have clarity over every angle and aspect that you might consider when buying a camera. I'll guide you through my entire camera buying process, taking you 90% of the way there. That way you'll be well prepared to make your decision. This is essentially all the guidance that I would give my own brother if he asked me, "Hey Joe, which camera should I buy?" Now I'm going to share that insight with you.